Damp styling has so many benefits, such as faster dry time, more volume, and stronger hold. But how can you avoid the dreaded wet frizz or stringiness when you're damp styling? Well, I'm gonna walk you through a step-by-step wash day routine, sharing all my tips and tricks for damp styling, so that way you can benefit from both damp and wet styling without the frizz or stringiness. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Gina, and here I make videos all about naturally curly hair. I love doing simplified step-by-step tutorials, helping you problem solve, talking about the science of hair, and much more. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back to my channel. So step one starts with what you do when you finish rinsing out your conditioner. So what I like to do is just squeeze out the excess water by scrunching my hair. I find that if I squeeze out the water any other way, I just end up with a lot of wet frizz, and this also helps to start to shrink the curls up and just keep them moisturized without drying out. So then I like to take my HairRepear towel and I just wrap it loosely. You want to make sure you are not using a bath towel because that will cause so much frizz. It's just too heavy on the hair, and a hair towel is really going to help. You can also use a cotton t-shirt. You don't have to have a specific hair towel. A t-shirt will work just fine, but loosely wrapping it is what's going to help to absorb the water right at your roots, but not soak up too much. Now, you can also plop with it if you want to. A plop totally works just fine, but I just like to loosely wrap it because it's a lot easier. So I'm gonna do my best to explain how much water is in my hair at each step of this routine, but it's almost a feeling. So here is where my roots are dry. You can see my hair is starting to dry and wet frizz is developing, but we're going to add more water because we don't want stringy and frizziness. So I'm using my spray bottle here. This is a mister spray bottle, which helps to not just saturate the hair too much because you don't want to soak it down too much, but you do want to mist it with water. But you could totally just use water on your hands from the faucet. So I like to spritz the links of my hair and just focus on any frizzy areas, which for me is the top section and the front section. But again, my roots are not soaking wet. This is the key here to my damp styling routine. You can see the dryness in my roots. They're not super dry and frizzy, but they're also not soaked. I don't feel water dripping down my scalp, but my hair is evenly wet. And I wanted to show you guys like what it sounds like because I figured that would give you a good idea of the amount of water in my hair as I'm squeezing it. But then if you listen closely, you'll notice that my roots are not making any squishy sound. The key here is my hair is evenly wet. There's not any random frizzy patches showing, but it's not soaking wet. Like it's not dripping, it's not saturating my shirt. My roots are not dripping wet. So step number 3 is to apply your curl cream or a leave-in conditioner all over. You can totally use both, but I like to just pick one or the other. I'm using a leave-in conditioner today from Ouidad. This is a product that helps to smooth the cuticle. It's gonna help lower that cuticle so we don't get a ton of wet frizz. And it also helps to prevent breakage too, which is nice, but it's protein-free. A really great product. So I'm just combing this all throughout my hair, or I'm raking it in and then I'm gonna comb it through. You want to make sure that you get your products evenly distributed if you want to prevent wet frizz, because sometimes when you're just raking it in, you might not be covering all areas of your hair. You might not be getting it up to the roots because you do want to make sure you are still moisturizing your roots, but not applying it to your scalp. That is the key. And I like to comb it through also because it just helps to smooth the hair out. But you always want to be very gentle when you are brushing your curly hair when it is wet. This leave-in conditioner is pretty lightweight, so I like to use it whenever I want to get very strong hold out of my gel because it moisturizes without weighing it down. It's not like a thick curl cream, but you could go with a curl cream if that's what your hair needs at the moment. Next 2 products are optional. If you don't want to use as many products, you can definitely skip these, but I've been trying to be better about using a heat protectant because I do diffuse. This is the Curlsmith Miracle Shield, so I've just been spraying this on my ends. This also has UV protection and all that, but again, you could skip it. I'm also using the Curlsmith volumizing lotion. I definitely notice a difference in volume when I use this and just more separation. And also it seems to improve my dry time too. So it shortens my dry time. So I've been adding this in to my routine, but again, it is optional, but it does make a difference if you're someone that is trying to achieve more volume and fullness. My hair is very thin, so I do find that this helps. It's just a lotion product, not too heavy or anything like that. I'm just raking this all throughout my hair. Now I'm just sectioning my hair. I like to do this to better apply my gel. I just get more hold out of it that way and I can just more precisely style. But if you're short on time, you don't have to section your hair. But I just wanted to show you here how my roots are not soaked. Again, the roots have more volume this way when you're leaving your roots just towel dried. So step number 4 is to apply a gel, and I'm using my favorite gel, which is the Ouidad Advanced Climate Control Stronger Hold Gel. So I prefer to use gels that are water-based and thin, and that makes it easier to apply when you are damp styling. Plus I get lots more volume that way, they have more slip, so I really just prefer this formula. It doesn't mean that the gel is light hold just because it's a lightweight formula. This is actually a strong hold gel, but it's also flexible. So if you don't want strong hold, you can totally still use this. I've even heard some people say they don't get a cast with this, but I find that when I use lighter weight curl creams or leave-ins underneath, or don't use one at all, and I damp style, I actually get a pretty strong cast with this. So if you're struggling to get a cast, maybe try using less water. Again, it's just that fine line of trying to find the right balance of water and dryness in your hair as you're applying your products. And I think I found a good amount, and I'm trying to show you that here in this video, so hopefully it's been helpful. If you are finding this helpful, definitely subscribe if you haven't already. There is a button down below for that. So if you're using a gel that is a thicker formula, that's going to require you to add in more water to dilute it. So if your gel is very thick, like it doesn't run down your hand, and it's like those clear gels, those usually require more water to dilute them. So that's why a lot of times those gels say to apply to soaking wet hair. So whenever I use those, I end up having to use more water and I don't get as much volume and they're harder to apply. So you might want to find a lighter weight gel that's more liquidy. I also wanted to just show you how my hands are usually wet when I'm styling as well, especially if I'm going to be doing something like finger coiling. I'm not just going in with dry hands with gel on them, my hands are wet too, so my hair is still getting enough water to not cause frizz when I'm styling, but it's not soaked. I also wanted to note that I am spritzing some water in between sections just a little bit, especially once I get up to my top section, because I've spent a few minutes styling and my hair dries very fast, especially the top section because it is more high porosity. The top section of your hair gets a lot more wear and tear, so it's normal for it to lose moisture faster. So I usually do have to spritz some more water, but not too much, just enough to get rid of that frizz that you're seeing, and it makes a big difference, as you can see. So as I'm sure you've noticed, I really like doing some brush styling. I'm using a Tangle Teezer brush just to help distribute the product better, smooth everything out, and also help to clump the curls in certain areas. Other areas like the underside layers, I like to keep it much more separated, but this really helps me with areas that tend to be very frizzy, areas that really struggle to clump at all and end up looking very stringy. I've been trying to brush style a lot less, and I'm definitely not doing it on every single piece of hair, but the pieces around my face definitely end up very stringy on the ends if I don't do this, and it also helps to smooth root frizz. I have a lot of new growth coming in too around my face framing pieces, so those definitely stick out and they just cause a lot of frizz, especially where I have grays. So brush styling really helps me with that, but fortunately this brush is pretty safe. It doesn't cause too much tension, and I also have products in my hair with a lot of slip, so I'm not seeing like a ton of hair falling out. But you do want to be very careful, and I would avoid brush styling if you do have very fragile, damaged hair, but it really helps me in these areas. As you can see, it looks much more defined. So once I'm done styling and I have my hair the way I want it with the curl clumps and everything, I like to take my hair towel and I pick up an area that is damp. You can see the area of the towel that has a lot of water, and I use that section to scrunch my hair. And this is called microplopping. It's essentially just scrunching your hair with your hair towel or your t-shirt, and this is going to help speed up your dry time so much, especially if you're somebody that likes to style with more water in your hair and you really like more wet styling. You definitely need to do this because you don't want to go in and diffuse soaking wet hair. It's going to take forever. So if you do get a little bit of frizz, as you can see, like I mentioned, the stringy parts of my hair in the front, they make me crazy and they always frizz up after I microplop. So I just add some gel to my hands and I mix it with some water and then just smooth that back over. This is sort of like a layering technique that is going to give you so much more hold, especially if you have these areas of your hair that just do not hold on to product. If you have high porosity hair, you might notice that once your hair dries, the product just seems to evaporate. It doesn't hold on to moisture. This layering technique helps so much that I'm just kind of going around and just finger coiling pieces that look a little frizzy just for some extra hold, and I just glaze that light layer of gel over the surface of my hair, and I get so much more hold this way, and it really helps. You'll want to make sure that when you're scrunching, you're not scrunching with dry hands. My hands always have water on them, or I even have gel in my hands because you don't want to cause frizz. And that also just helps keep the hair hydrated and keep it from drying out and becoming frizzy while you are scrunching it. But if you get a ton of frizz while scrunching, you can also try not scrunching. But these are my results after I finished doing that layering technique, and I'm actually ready to go in and diffuse now. So you can see there's not any wet frizz, everything is nice and defined, but my hair is still not soaked. So I'm gonna time my diffusing because I wanted to show you guys how much faster it is to diffuse when you damp style versus soaking wet styling. So I'm using my Curlsmith Diffusion hairdryer, which has a super large diffuser head, which definitely speeds up dry time. Typically my diffusing takes anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, just depending on how much water I use, what products I use, how clumped my hair is. All of those things really do affect dry time, so it tends to vary, but usually I'm sitting around like 13 to 15 minutes, so we will see how long it takes me. So it took me about 12 minutes to fully dry my hair, and lately I've been scrunching out the crunch with the diffuser, and that just helps to create even more volume and dry any of the areas that might be a little bit damp, like inside of your curl clumps, especially if you really like to clump your hair, this helps. And if you end up with any frizzy pieces or stringy pieces, just take a little bit of water on your hands and just finger coil them, and then you can just hit it with the diffuser again, and it should set that gel cast back in place, or you can even add a little bit of gel if you need to. Then I like to put in my root clips for some even more volume. I can link these for you below along with all the other products. And then I take them out and finish fluffing out my hair once it's completely set and cooled off. So here's how much water that I used. Not too much. This is just from one styling routine. This bottle was full before I started styling, so just for reference. So here are my final results. I love my results anytime that I use this styling routine because I have lots of volume, but also definition, and it didn't take that long at all to diffuse my hair, which was super nice. And I like the amount of cast that I have. Even after I scrunched out the gel cast, I still had really good hold, which was nice, but it's not crunchy or anything. It actually feels pretty soft, but I do still have hold in my hair. And this routine will last me for days with very minimal refreshing, which is awesome. I also wanted to touch on porosity for a little bit because porosity does have a big impact in how much water that your hair absorbs and retains, and also how long your hair takes to dry, and also your hair's density. So if your hair is much thicker than mine, it's obviously gonna take a lot longer to diffuse your curls, and especially if you were styling soaking wet, it's gonna take a really long time to diffuse. So when it comes to porosity, if you are somebody with high porosity hair, then your hair really does absorb a lot of water and product, but it can also release it really quickly once you squeeze it out. So I usually don't recommend styling soaking wet for high porosity hair because it's just gonna take in all that water and just kind of get waterlogged and really weighed down. So damp styling can actually help high porosity hair for mostly all porosities. Now I will say with low porosity hair, I could probably see how wet styling could be better because you're really trying to get that moisture to absorb into the hair with your product, and I can see how if you're just damp styling, the product might sit on the surface. So play around with it. If you are someone that has low porosity hair, you might have to incorporate more water, but I don't have that hair type, so I personally haven't experimented with damp versus wet styling on someone with low porosity hair. But regardless of your porosity or your density, I really don't recommend just styling soaking wet and then going straight to diffusing. You really need that in-between step to absorb that excess water with your t-shirt, whether if it's through plopping or microplopping or something, because it's just going to take forever for your hair to dry, and it's really not great to leave it wet for a long period of time. And don't go to bed with it wet and a plop either. That's also not great for your scalp. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you were looking for more tips to reduce your wet frizz, then I definitely recommend checking out the video that I'll have linked right here on the screen, which is all about how you can tame wet frizz when you're styling. I hope you find that helpful for better damp styling without the wet frizz, and I will talk to you over there. Bye everyone.